Hi everyone. It's been a really long time since I've seen any of you in person. I miss you. I hope you're well and I hope you're safe at home. And hopefully we can see each other soon at Ethos. But until then, I have a class I'd like to propose, a class I'd like to give you, online of course right now. It's something different from our standard class offerings at Ethos. It is something that maybe normally you wouldn't entertain. Either you don't have the time or you don't have the energy to do anything in addition to your standard practice. But I hope you give this a go. I'm going to call this a basic mobility class or a joint mobility class. And it's different from a yoga class that we'd have at Ethos in that it's not really flowing. I won't get up on my pulpit and give you any inspiration. I won't preach it to you at all. It's going to be kind of nitty gritty sometimes, but it's going to be pretty simple. Even though it's simple, I think it's going to be really profound, and you'll notice some differences in how you feel and in your range of motion, even after doing this just one time. So in yoga, we often refer to flexibility. Flexibility is the ability of a muscle to lengthen. But I want to think of mobility more today. And in mobility, I'm referring to the ability of a joint to move. Oftentimes, this will be an active range of motion that we're exploring. So us moving our joints with our muscles. But there's also a passive range of motion, and that's often you getting into a shape and letting it sit. You can think of like a yin class, or somebody actually maybe pushing you forward in a forward fold. That's your passive range of motion. Today we're going to explore active, meaning where you can put your body, where you can go with your body on your own, with your own muscles, with your own effort. So we have a lot of joints in the body, right? And the main ones we're going to look at today: ankles, toes, feet, knees, hips, shoulders, wrists, and fingers. Also the spine as well, right? The spine being a joint. So we're going to look at moving through those joints in a basic way today, again, a simple way. So you don't need any special equipment, just something comfortable to lay on. We will be laying both on the belly and on the back for certain points of this class. And comfortable clothing. It doesn't have to be special compressive yoga gear or anything like that. Just something that you can move in and explore your full range of motion without feeling confined. So we're going to start down on the back today. So ease yourself down onto your back, onto your mat, or wherever you're laying. And it's going to start really simply. I see that I can't really fully get in the frame here, so you'll have to just hear my voice and not see my mouth moving. So we're going to start with the knees bent, right, pointed up, the arms out to the side to some degree. They don't have to be perfectly perpendicular as they would be in a spinal twist. And you're going to let your knees just simply, both of them, sway to the right. Good. Then you'll pick them back up, let them point up, the feet stay on the mat the whole time, and then the knees sway to the left. And again, knees point up, and go over to the right. Knees point up, and go on over to the left. So a few more times like this. And it's similar to a spinal twist we might do in yoga, except that the feet stay down. And it's less about getting that deep twist through the spine. This is more about moving through the hips and the pelvis and the low back. So you'll notice when your knees go one way, you have an external rotation in one hip, while you have an internal rotation in the opposite hip. So we're working with both external and internal rotation in the femur bone and the hip socket here. A couple more times side to side. This just kind of feels nice, especially in the low back area. It loosens up the low back, especially if you're finding yourself sitting a lot or standing a lot during the day. Good. One more time over to the left since we started to the right. And then pass your knees back on over to the right. Once they get over there, bring left knee over on top of knee. So stack them rather than having them staggered. And bring your left arm over on top of your right arm. So arm is on top of arm. We're going to take this left arm for some movement. We're going to work into the shoulder. So simply I want you to open your left arm back open, almost like a spinal twist. But you don't need to drop the shoulder all the way to the floor. And then bring left arm back over on top of right arm. So almost like you're tracing a rainbow here. You're lifting your arm up and open, and then arm comes back over on top of arm. Just a couple times like this. Arm opens and closes. Good. The next time the arm opens, hold it open for a moment. Feel that depth of stretch across the chest. Bring the knees back through center. And we're going to shift to the other side. So you're going to roll onto the left side now. Let the knees be stacked. And the right arm is on top of the left arm. And then the same opening and closing motion. So open your right arm out. Again, the hand and the shoulder do not have to come all the way to the floor if they won't. And then bring that right arm back over. So the motion is up and open, up and close. Just a couple more times. Again, we're working on the shoulders, opening the shoulder up a bit, warming the shoulder up a bit, exploring the range of motion that you have in your shoulder, noticing if things feel kind of pinchy or uncomfortable, and if they feel painful, you back off, right? You modify the movement to be less big. You don't want to work through pain here. You don't want to trigger that stress response in your brain. Good. The next time the arm opens, hold it open for a moment and bring the knees back through center. And just hug both knees into your chest for a moment. Rock a little side to side if you want. It feels good. I'm going to try to reposition myself in the frame here so you can see me a bit more. Okay, so we're going to move now into the ankle and the foot. So left knee stays bent. The right leg goes up in the air, and I have some options here. If it's hard to lift the leg and hold it up parallel to you, or rather, I guess that would be perpendicular to you, you could bend the knee a bit, or you could even support the leg with your hand, holding onto the leg so the leg stays up in the air. So find a way to make it work for you. And then we're just simply going to point and flex the foot. Start moderately, right? Just kind of pointing and flexing, no big deal. But then as the ankle starts to warm up and the foot starts to warm up, and that's pretty quick, see if you can make the point a little more and the flex a little deeper. Couple more times pointing. So the ankle is an important joint, right? It helps stabilize the entire leg. Full range of motion in the ankle is essential for you to be able to move through space safely. One more point and flex. And then just bring the foot to a neutral position, so neither pointed nor flexed. Now we're going to start to circle that right foot that's up in the air. So start with some circles. Whatever direction just naturally happened. Start circling the foot. Again, the circles might be kind of small. They might feel kind of clunky and not very graceful. That's okay. Nothing has to be just so. We're, again, exploring movement here. And now reverse the direction of your circling. And you might find things get really interesting when you try to reverse that direction. I know for me, this direction is a lot harder. It's harder for me to kind of make it happen. I have a less strong neural connection moving my foot in this direction. It's something that will improve the more I do it, theoretically. Good, one more circle, the foot comes back. Just hug the knee down to the chest for a moment. And let's switch sides. So right foot comes down, the knee is bent, my leg stays bent. The left leg goes up in the air, and again, options, you could grab or bend the knee depending on the hamstring and the low back. Start to point and flex. As you point and flex the foot on this side and you're a little more familiar with what we're doing, maybe you can relax the shoulders a bit more, breathe a little more smoothly. Again, this is an exploration of movement. You can encounter it with a little bit of a playful attitude. You don't have to be super serious about it. And there aren't hard and strong wrongs and rights, right? So there's a lot of gray area when we do this kind of work. Now start to circle the foot in one direction. Again, whatever direction naturally came first is fine. Maybe just note it. I even find with this foot, it's my left foot, that it's a little less coordinated than my right, and I'm right-handed, and that's probably why. Now reverse the direction of your circle. Again, you might have to really concentrate to get the foot to move in the opposite direction, the opposite circle. And then hug the knee down to the chest. Bring the right knee in as well. Hug both shins towards you. Maybe that sway side to side, that familiar rocking motion we do in yoga, just to loosen things up. Smooth out your breath. Now we're going to change the rocking from side to side to now forward and backward. And I want us to rock a few times before we actually get up to seated like this. And to do it safely, you want to tuck your chin to your chest so that my spine is rounded, so I have a rocking surface, right? If my head is cranked back, I'm going to hit it. So I want to tuck my chin into my chest and start to rock forward and backward a few times, not getting all the way up to seated right away if you can avoid it. One more time maybe, and then maybe even hover before your feet touch the floor. And then let's come to seated. So I'm turning to face you. You don't have to turn on your mat. Do whatever works for you. This is a simple cross-legged position, and I'm sure you're super familiar with it, being that you go to yoga all the time. So we're going to change this up a little bit. We're going to go into what's sometimes called a figure four sit or a shin box position. So starting by pulling the right leg back. The left leg stays as it was. It's almost like pigeon leg when you look down at it. And the right heel is pulled back towards the right hip. It doesn't have to be super close. So this is, again, the figure four or the shin box position. I want you just to feel this to start. So you might notice, again, that we have that internal-external rotation going on with the hips. This leg, the left leg, is externally rotated, and the right one is internally rotated. And right away, you might feel a little bit of pressure against the inside of the right knee, or maybe some heat in the hip because you're not used to sitting this way. Be patient and make modifications where you need to. Including, you could prop the knee up on the opposite foot to kind of modify it a bit to start. So we're going to start in this shape with a little bit of a reach and a twist. Left hand is going to post behind you. You're going to take your right arm and reach it across and up, almost in a diagonal, away from your right hip. And in fact, if you can, emphasize your right hip dropping down towards the mat. Just a couple breaths will do. And come back to center, and we're going to switch the legs. So to start switching the legs, you can post both hands. Later on, we're going to work into moving the legs without posting the hands if possible. But for now, we're going to switch the legs around, other way. So again, now we're in that figure four or that shin box position. The right leg is almost like a pigeon leg, and the left leg is pulled back. And then just try to center your weight over your hips. It'll be tempting to kind of lean out to the side, but you want to put the weight back over your hips and feel the way the hips engage there. We're going to twist, so plant the right hand or post it. Take the left arm over and across and reach. Don't forget to breathe. Nice, come back through center. I want you to reach around behind you and post both hands. What we're going to do is we're going to do a little switch side to side with the legs. You might need to slide your legs back a little bit more to the center of your mat. And if you don't understand what I mean, you'll understand in a second when we start to move with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick both knees up, which means we're going to plant both feet, and then we're going to sway them to the other side. Again, knees go up and over to one side. Knees go up and over to the other side. So after a few rounds, you might try to get your spine a little more erect, your body a little closer to your legs, and still do the same motion. Knees point up and pass to one side. Knees point up and pass to the other side. So if you find you can do this rather easily, you could take your arms off, your hands off the floor, and float your arms. Point your knees up and pass them. Point your knees up and pass them. Again, knees point up and sway one way. Knees point up and sway to the other side. One more time to each side. Knees point up and sway to the right. Knees rise up and sway to the left. So I kind of wiggled myself closer to you. I'm going to scooch back. I'm working on not moving so much when I do that little sequence, not moving forward and backward so much. So I'm going to scooch back. I'm going to go ahead and bring my knees over to the right again. So in that shin box position, spine not leaned out to the side as much as possible, centered over the hips, and right knee is out to the side. So we're going to work on some active mobility on the left leg. So again, the right leg's in front. We're going to work on active mobility with the left hip. So it's going to look something like this. I'm going to start by posting my hand to give me some support. I'm going to float my left leg up, and hover it. And it doesn't have to lift that high. And in fact, it might not lift that high. I'm gonna swing it around in front and float it for a moment, and then bring it back around, hovering it over the mat the whole time before I set it back down. Again, float it, swing it around, hold it for a second, keep breathing. Take it back around, almost like a karate kick, and back around behind you. Let's do it again. Maybe you try without your hands. Bring it around in front, float it, back over to the side, hover for a second, set it down. Again, up, around, back, and into place. One more time. I'm feeling some heat in my left hip. Hopefully you are as well. Good, and pause in the center for a moment. You'll notice that I shifted, or I had to shift to the right to do this. The more control I get, the stronger I get in my left hip, the less I'll have to compensate by shifting my weight to the side. Eventually, hopefully, I'll be able to stay kind of center and do it without shifting at all. So we're gonna switch sides. Bring the legs around. So now my left leg is out in front. That means my right hip is the one that's gonna be working. I'm kind of centered. I'm trying not to shift too much to the side, and I'll start again this exercise by posting the left hand for a little support. You're gonna reach, or you're gonna lift the right leg up, float it, bring it around in front, hover it for a second, back around, and set it down. Try to do this as lightly as possible. Leg lifts up, you keep breathing through the nose, you bring it around, you float it, you bring it back around, and that last little bit, you try to float it off the mat before you gently set it down. One more time with a hand. Gently set it down. Now, if you can, and you did it on the other side, you might as well try no hands here. So you can extend the arms for a little counterbalance, a little counter support, or hold them in front of you. Float the leg up, bring it around in front, swing it, almost like you're going to have spinal twists, those of you who go to yoga all the time, almost like you're gonna cross that foot over the thigh, and then bring it over and around. Hover it for a second before you softly set it down. Again, up, around, maybe thinking of a cool vinyasa sequence as you do this. Bring it back around, hover it, and set it down. One more time, lift, bring it around, back out to the side. I'm gonna hover it that last second before I set it down onto the mat. Good. Now we're gonna stay on this side, still in that figure 4 shin box. What I want you to try to do is rise up onto your shins. If you're unsure as to how your feet and ankles and knees are gonna deal with this and handle that load, I want you to use your hands out in front to kind of guide you up under your shins to start, just like this, and then set yourself back down. Now I do this a lot, so I know that my knees and my shins and my ankles and my feet can handle it. So if that's something that you know you can handle, you can do without your hands. You just rise up and kind of press forward through your pelvis, almost like a camel pose, and sit back down. Do it again, rise up, a little thrust of the hips forward, and sit back down. One more time, rise up onto the shins, push forward with your pelvis, and control the way down, nice and slow. Switch sides. So again, starting in that figure 4, chest is in center. I'm not swayed out to the side too much. I rise up and I sit down. And again, you can use your hands if you need to. Maybe this right knee's wonky and it needs a little more support. Always listening to your body. No one knows more about it than you. Even if you're convinced you know very little about your own body, you still know more about it than I do. Again, one more time, rise up. And sit yourself back down. Good, bring your legs back around in front, cross-legged, and sit with your hands resting on your knees for a moment. Come back to your breathing. There can never be too much attention given to the breath. Good, now we're gonna come to a table position of hands and knees. So rolling over the ankles to table. So table is, hands are underneath the shoulders and hips are stacked over the knees, just like a very sturdy table. We do this in yoga all the time. I'm gonna turn to face you, which means I'm kind of not really on my mat, but I want you to see what I'm doing, especially as we work with the hands here. So one of the things I notice a lot when I'm teaching class and I walk around the room and you guys have your eyes closed and you're breathing and enjoying being in your body is that people tend to dump into their wrists. They get really kind of sloppy with their hands. Their fingers might not even be engaged. They might be completely just putting the weight on this very small point of support of their wrist, which over time is going to really fry the wrist and possibly also the shoulders. So even in table, even if you're not doing like a handstand or downward facing dog for that matter, I want you to think active hands. Look down at your own two hands, spread your fingers apart and try to really engage them. Feel the points of contact through all 5 fingers of each hand, even through the 4 outer corners of each hand, and a slight lift through the palm. Now, when you engage your hands like this, you usually will engage your shoulders. But just to check, we're going to do a couple shoulder shrugs. So when my shoulders are not engaged, I just dump. Okay, my chest almost collapses down through my shoulders, through my shoulders. Now when I engage my shoulders broaden on my back and there's a lift. Now it's not cat-cow, so notice the difference. This is cat-cow. I'm arching and bending. This is an engaged shoulder and a disengaged. When I disengage, when I dump, it looks like this, even though my back is still flat. When I engage, it looks like this. You can think of it too as having some space between your shoulder blades on your back. And I want you to keep that engaged shoulder and engaged hand every time you're in table pose. So you can come off your hands for a moment. You might be surprised if you don't normally use your hands actively, how your hands might feel a little bit of strain already. So we're gonna come back to table in a moment and we're gonna start by doing some exercises for the fingers, the hands, and the wrists. Really important joints. You think off how often you use your hands and how many things your hands do for you. I wanna give them a little extra care from time to time. So we're gonna come here and we're gonna do some simple swaying. So I activate my hands. I have nice broad shoulders, I'm not dumping. And I just simply want to sway a little forward so that when I look down, my elbows and my shoulders are actually in front of my wrist just a little bit. And then I'm gonna shift the weight back, just a little sway back. So again, it's not cat-cow, we're not doing that yet. We're swaying forward. Spine stays kind of straightish, back stays very table-ish, and then I sway back. Just a couple times. Feel the shift of weight over your hands. Now these movements, a lot of these exercises are really simple. And that's a blessing in disguise because it allows you to really perceive all the subtleties of things that you normally wouldn't notice when you're doing things in a more complicated fashion. So notice everything right now. The shift of weight as you go forward into your fingertips, the shift of weight as you pull back. Now come back to center, a centered table. If you need to wiggle a little bit, we're gonna start to sway side to side. So you're gonna shift the weight a bit to the right. It doesn't have to be a lot. And you're gonna shift and sway the weight to the left. And again, it doesn't have to be big. Again, sway to the right, keep the hands active. Sway to the left. Couple more times, shift to the right. Shoulders are still broad, hands are still active, and sway to the left. Good, come back to center, and if you need to, pause. Anytime you need to get off your hands for a bit. Pause, shake them out. You can always pause this video and start it again when you feel ready to do more. So we'll move on, going back to your hands and knees again. We're gonna start by doing some hand turns. Again, active hands, we're gonna start by turning the left hand out 90 degrees, so out to the left. Start with that. That might be plenty of weight bearing, plenty of change in the joint for you today. And again, you're wanting to bear weight into this left hand. It's not out of the left hand by any means. You're allowing the weight to go into it as if it were turned forward. If this doesn't seem like much, you can turn it all the way till it points to your knee. So the inner side of my wrist is facing forward. Now, wherever you find it's just enough, whether that was to the side or back all the way, we're gonna start those same sways forward and backward. They might need to be a bit smaller, right? Don't push the envelope right now. When you're starting with this stuff, be a little more conservative rather than taking a risk. It's important to figure out what kind of a connection you have with your body, what kind of a connection you have in terms of where your joints move and how they move. Good. When you come back to center, turn the hand back around forward and pull back for a quick child's pose. Good. Coming up to hands and knees, and we'll start that same process with the right hand. So start again with a turn just 90 degrees to the side. And again, that might be plenty. It doesn't have to be any more than this. If that feels kind of ho-hum, then you feel like you have more movement, you could turn it so that the inside of the wrist faces forward. My fingertips face towards my right knee. Now I'm feeling some interesting sensation in my right hand, but it's not painful at all. And in fact, if it's painful, I want you to back out of it. Don't push it. So wherever you need to be, sideways or fingers turned back, we're gonna start that same slow and small shifting motion forward and backward. It doesn't need to be a lot. Mind your left hand the whole time too. Keep that left hand active. Don't get lazy with it. It's tempting to get a little bit lazy with it, especially when you think this is simple. I don't need to really pay attention. You do need to pay attention. Good. Next time you come back to center, turn the hand back around, and let's again take a child's pose. Slide the hands forward, pull the hips back, bow the head towards the earth. Good. Coming up to your hands and knees again. So we're going to move out of the wrists more to the shoulders. So we're going to come to table again, just a basic table position. And we're gonna do threaded needle. This is a familiar pose, those of you who come to class. Starting with the right arm, you're gonna reach it up. And I want you to hold it up for a moment. Really reach up through the right palm and press into the left palm. Active hand, you just trained that hand to be active. Now take the right arm and slide it through, come down onto your right shoulder, the side of your face. You can slide your left arm forward if that works for you. Make sure you're breathing. This is a good place to close your eyes. If you need a little bit more stretch for the right shoulder and you're not quite sure how to achieve that, try dropping the left side of your chest down a bit more. Instead of having the left side turned open so much, see if you can kind of close that angle. Good, press into the left palm. Go ahead and slip that right arm out. Take it back up into the air and set it down. Other side. So plant that right hand, activate it. You're gonna lift up with your left arm and slide it through, come down under the shoulder. Same thing, you can slide your right arm forward. And if you need more of a stretch, you work on dropping the right shoulder down, closing the right side of your chest down a bit more. Good, press into the right palm. Take the left arm back up to the sky. Reach and set the hand down to the mat. Good. I'm gonna come to center and pause for a moment. Check in with your breath. Make sure you are breathing through your nose. And before we come up to hands, or off of hands and knees rather, we're gonna do one more exercise that can be done from table. And it's an exercise that will help train active range of motion in your hip. It will help you get stronger in your hips and help you with that whole stepping forward process that we do from downward facing dog in yoga. Think of how many times you're asked to step up with a foot into, say, warrior or a kneeling lunge or a twisting lunge or something like that. And if you have difficulty doing that, practicing this next set of motions will help you gain strength there. So again, we're going to start from table, just from table, not down dog. And what I want you to do is take your right foot and step it up outside your right hand. And at first you might have to think about that. How am I going to get that to happen? I'm going to offer you some suggestions. I want you to think of pulling your right hip up in towards you, your leg into your hip socket, and then you're going to contract it in towards you a bit before you step the right hip up outside your hand. Now, maybe you say that's not so easy peasy for me. It's not happening. I'm going to have to drag it up. That might have to happen for a while. Or it might look something like this. You bring it up and you have to kind of wiggle that foot forward before you step it back. It is what it is, and you make it work. You train it, you keep working at it, and eventually it will get easier. So same thing with the left foot. I'm going to try to step it up outside my left hand, and I'm in a kneeling lunge with my hands down, and then I take it back. Other side, right foot steps up. And if you can do this kind of easily, I want you to work on stepping up super softly, landing that foot as softly as possible using control, and bringing the knee back just as softly to the floor. Left side, step it up, and bring the knee back. One more time each side. Right foot steps up, outside of the right foot, softly if you can. The knee goes back to table, and left foot steps up, and comes back to the floor. Good. Sit back to child's pose for just a moment. Bow your head down towards the mat. You can see how doing a few sets of those, more sets than we did today, would really work at getting that hip stronger and giving you a little bit more mobility for stepping forward. So maybe that's something you want to kind of bookmark and practice on your own. But for now, we're going to come through to laying on the belly. And we're going to work on some hip extensions and some shoulder extensions. So you're going to ease yourself down to your belly here. And I'm hoping I can position myself so that you can see me. We're going to start with shoulders, so I'll kind of wiggle the rest of my body back behind me a bit so you can see what I'm doing with my shoulders. I'm just going to start by crossing my wrists and setting my forehead down. You might find it's a little bit uncomfortable, and if you have glasses on like I do today, you might have to move them out of the way. So you're going to set your head down. Pause here for a moment, just laying on your belly. Try to relax your glutes a little bit, at least for now. When we lift the leg, we will engage the glutes, but right now just try to relax a bit. We're going to do one arm at a time. And again, this is a basic class today, so we will increase the complexity of these exercises, of these movements, as I add more classes onto this little chain of classes I'm hoping to make. But for now, we're going to keep it really simple and basic, and that doesn't mean that it's necessarily easy, but I don't want to overcomplicate things right now. So we're going to start, again, with the head down. You're going to move your hands out of the way. You can put your left arm either down to your side or out in front of you. This left arm right now doesn't much matter, so figure out what you want to do with it. The right arm's going to reach forward, palm face down. What I want you to do is lift the right arm only up, straight up, as high as you can, which isn't probably very high. I want you to swing it out to the side. When it's directly out to your side, when it's perpendicular to my body, I'm going to flip my palm up now. So that means my pinky is actually in front of my thumb. Keeping my hand flipped up like this, I'm going to bring it around behind me and bring it as close to hovering over my bottom as I can. Then I'm going to still keep it lifted as I bring it out to the side. When it gets perpendicular again, I'm going to flip my palm. So the palm flips down, and then it goes back forward, almost like a Superman or Superwoman shape, and I drop that arm to the mat. I'm going to switch sides. So now my left arm's forward. I lift it. I swing it out to the side. I keep it lifted. I flip my palm. I bring it around behind me. I try to bring it as far over my bottom as I can, even maybe crossing to the other side of my body if you have that mobility in your shoulder. Bring it back to the side, keeping the palm flipped up. Flip the palm here. Bring it back around in front, hover, and drop. So now that we've done one arm at a time, we're going to work on doing both arms together. So again, your forehead needs to come down. The arms lift. They come out to the sides. They flip the palms. You bring your arms back behind you. Maybe you try to touch your thumbs over your bottom, keeping them lifted. And then you bring your arms back around to the sides. Flip the palms and take them out in front. Keep them lifted this time as you take them back out. Flip the palm. Try to touch the thumbs. Get the thumbs as close together as you can. Bring them back out to the sides. Flip the palms. Bring them around in front. Try to touch the thumbs. One more time. Out to the sides. They're lifted the whole time. You're probably feeling some heat now. Flip the palms. Bring them around behind you. Thumbs as close as they can. Out to the sides. Flip. And back around in front. And drop the hands to the earth. Pause for a moment. Make a pillow again and rest your head on it. So that was exercise for some shoulder mobility, getting a little bit more mobility out of your shoulders. The shoulders are my tight spot in my body. They're probably what I would consider, I guess, my problem area. So I've been doing more and more as I get older to kind of address my perceived, at least, lack of mobility in my shoulders, knowing that I'm not going to necessarily gain any more mobility in my shoulders by not doing anything, especially as I'm aging. So I'm working on doing some more stuff like that. Hanging is another great thing you can do if you have monkey bars or a pull-up bar at home that you can hang from. Just simply hanging from something will help you get more mobility in your shoulders. So we're gonna move now to the hips, and it's still gonna be on the belly, but I'm gonna have to kind of army crawl myself forward so that you can see what I'm doing with my legs here. So coming back down to the belly, and I'm gonna start with my left leg because it's closest to the camera. We're gonna work on extending the hip. So this is something we don't often do in yoga. You can think of most of the motions we do in yoga. We're often hinging or pulling the leg in towards the body rather than lifting the leg away. So here we're gonna work on hip extension. You're simply gonna lift your left leg up and just hold it. Don't hold your breath, but hold the leg up. And notice that my leg is not lifted that high. I'm lifting the leg. I am not turning my left hip up to lift my leg. Notice the difference. My hips stay down, my pelvis stays down on the mat. It doesn't rack open because that's kind of cheating the motion here. We're trying to keep the hips square and just lift the left leg. And that's about enough. Let the left leg come down, rest for a moment, and then switch sides. Right leg lifts up. Again, it's not very high that it's lifting, and it doesn't have to be. I'm keeping my breath moving through my nose. And again, I'm focusing on lifting the right leg without turning the right hip up or turning it open to the side. And then let the right leg come down. Back to the left leg. This time bend the knee. So my foot is facing, the sole of my foot is facing the ceiling right now. Same thing with the left leg. I just want to lift the left leg up as much as I can and try to keep the sole of my foot facing the ceiling up above me. Trying not to turn my right hip up, or my left hip rather, up, to cheat the motion, to kind of give the work to some other part of my body. I want my glute to work here. I want to work hip extension. And let that leg come down. Other side. Bend the right knee, sole of the foot faces up, and I lift the right leg. Just this. I just want to point out that as you're doing these exercises, pretty much all the exercises I listed today, it's not uncommon for there to be the thought, is this all it is? Is this all it's supposed to feel like? And the answer is usually yes, this is all it is. Trust the process. Lift up a little higher if you can without turning the right hip up. And let that leg come down to the earth. Good. Bring your palms back by your shoulders. Squeeze the elbows back. Conjure up your best yoga cobra pose. So press the chest up. Keep the elbows pointed back if possible. And then sink back into a final child's pose. Good. Coming out of child's pose to simple hands and knees, and then through to seated. So we're going to finish just a little work for the neck. So this is another problem area sometimes for people. I feel like they have a tight neck or a restricted range of motion in the neck. As with all the other exercises we did today, be cautious, right? Err on the side of being a little conservative right now until you figure out exactly how this part of your body moves. So we're simply going to let the chin drop to the chest, staying upright through the spine. So we're not leaning forward. We're simply tilting the chin forward. Bring the head back to neutral and let the head tilt to the right. So I'm dropping my right ear towards my right shoulder, but I'm not necessarily pulling my right shoulder up to the ear. So I keep my shoulders where they were in space, and I let the head simply tilt to the right. I bring my head back to neutral. I tilt it to the left. Good. My head comes back to neutral, And now I let my head dip back, my chin tilt up. Don't force anything. Notice if your shoulders start to rise. That probably means you're maybe going a little too far. Try to keep the shoulders down. When it feels like it's just enough, stay with that. Good, head back to neutral. Now we're going to turn the head, not tilt it. So turn your head to the left, like you're gazing over your left shoulder as far as you can without bringing the right shoulder around with you. So we're not turning the whole spine, we're simply turning the head. So keep your shoulders almost like they're pinned in space. Keep them there and turn to the left. Make sure you're turning a lot, but turning only so much as you can keep breathing. Bring your nose back to neutral and then turn to the right. Good, bring your head back to neutral and sit with it for just a moment. Feel that wonderful sensation of being in your body, being present in your cells. Take a deep breath in through your nose and sigh it out. Thanks, guys, for having some fun with me today on the mat. I hope to see you soon, and stay well.